Listen carefully, because this is the truth nobody wants to tell you. Most people believe poverty begins in the wallet. They think the poor remain poor because they do not earn enough money. But history proves something far darker. Entire nations have risen from ruins. Men who once slept on dirt floors became rulers of industries. And at the same time, people who win lotteries destroy their fortunes within years. Why? Because wealth is never controlled by money first. It is controlled by the mind. A poor mind creates poor decisions. Poor decisions create poor habits. And poor habits slowly build a prison around a man until he no longer notices the bars. You see, the dangerous thing about poverty is not hunger. Hunger can motivate. The dangerous thing is psychological surrender. The moment a man accepts that struggle is his permanent identity, he becomes easy to control. Society understands this perfectly. That is why people are trained from childhood to chase comfort instead of power. Look at the average worker. Every morning he wakes up exhausted. He sells his time all day. He returns home mentally drained. Then he spends the little money he earned trying to escape the pain of his existence. Cheap entertainment, fast food, meaningless luxuries, temporary pleasure becomes medicine for permanent frustration. And then the cycle repeats again tomorrow. This is not accidental. The modern world survives because millions of people remain psychologically weak enough to consume more than they build. And perhaps this sounds cruel, but you must understand something Machiavelli understood centuries ago. Weakness invites exploitation. The world does not pity weakness, it profits from it. The poor man is constantly manipulated emotionally. He is told to buy things he cannot afford to impress people who do not care about him. He is convinced that appearing wealthy matters more than becoming wealthy. So he purchases symbols instead of assets, shoes instead of skills, status instead of ownership, pleasure instead of freedom. And then he wonders why he remains trapped. But the first brutal strategy to building wealth on a low income is this. You must destroy the emotional habits that keep you financially obedient. That means learning to separate feelings from decisions. Most people spend emotionally. They eat emotionally. They quit emotionally. They fear emotionally. Their entire financial life is controlled by temporary moods. And because of this, they become predictable. The powerful are never ruled by impulse. Imagine two men earning the exact same small income. One spends every extra dollar chasing relief from stress. The other uses every extra dollar to acquire knowledge, tools, and opportunities. 5 years later, their lives no longer resemble each other. One remains trapped in survival, while the other slowly gains leverage over life itself. The difference was never income. The difference was psychological discipline. You must understand that the human brain is addicted to immediate rewards. This is why poor financial habits feel natural. Buying something today gives instant pleasure. Saving gives no applause. Investing gives no excitement. Discipline is invisible in the beginning, which is why most people abandon it before it transforms them. But powerful people think differently. They are willing to suffer strategically today so they can dominate tomorrow. This is why isolation becomes necessary at certain stages of life. If everyone around you wastes money, mocks ambition, and fears risk, eventually their mindset infects you. Human beings absorb the standards of their environment. A weak circle creates weak financial behavior. People who laugh at discipline will secretly resent your growth, because your self-control exposes their excuses. So there comes a moment where a person building wealth must become comfortable disappointing others. You may need to refuse invitations. Stop chasing trends. Stop buying things for validation. Stop explaining your goals to people committed to mediocrity. Because every empire begins with separation from the crowd. And here is another brutal truth nobody says out loud. Many people remain poor because they are addicted to looking rich. They fear appearing broke more than actually being broke. A man earning little money buys expensive clothes to protect his ego. He finances cars he cannot afford. He lives beyond his means to gain temporary respect from strangers. But true wealth grows silently in the beginning. Real power often looks ordinary before it becomes undeniable. The wealthy understand something the poor often do not. Appearances can wait. Ownership cannot. That is why psychological strength matters more than financial strength at the beginning. Can you delay gratification while everyone around you chases pleasure? Can you remain focused while others mock your sacrifices? Can you tolerate temporary discomfort without escaping into distractions? Because if you cannot master your emotions, money will only magnify your chaos. And perhaps the greatest psychological trap of poverty is hopelessness. Once people believe their effort changes nothing, they stop trying intelligently. They stop learning, stop adapting, stop imagining a different future. Their mind becomes passive. And passive minds are easy to rule. But every transformation in history began when someone refused to mentally accept their position. A low income does not mean low potential. A small beginning does not mean a small destiny. The problem is that most people wait for motivation before they change their lives. But motivation is unreliable. Discipline is what creates freedom. Discipline is waking up tired and still improving yourself. Discipline is saving tiny amounts consistently. Discipline is studying after long work days. Discipline is refusing to waste energy on habits that weaken your future. This is why building wealth is ultimately a war against yourself, against your impulses, against your excuses, against your fear of sacrifice, against the weak voice in your mind begging for comfort every time life becomes difficult. Because the moment you conquer your psychology, even a small income becomes dangerous. A disciplined person with limited money will eventually outperform an undisciplined person with opportunity. Because strategy compounds while emotions collapse under pressure. And once a person learns to control desire, instead of being controlled by it, they begin to see the hidden structure of power itself. Let me tell you something most people never understand about money. The rich do not see money the way ordinary people do. To the average person, money is comfort. It is entertainment. It is escape. The moment they receive it, they think about what they can buy, what pleasure they can experience, what image they can project to the world. Money enters their hands and immediately disappears into consumption. But to strategic minds, money is not pleasure. Money is a weapon. Money is a worker. Money is a soldier sent into battle to conquer more territory. And this is why many people stay poor even when they earn more. Because they do not command their money. They entertain themselves with it. They kill their future slowly through thousands of small emotional decisions they barely notice. Look carefully at society. The system encourages you to spend before you think. Every advertisement whispers the same message. You deserve this. They want your emotions stronger than your logic, because emotional people consume. Strategic people accumulate power. Now imagine a man earning a very small income. Most people would say he has no chance of building wealth. But history repeatedly proves the opposite. Some of the most dangerous financial empires began with almost nothing, because the person understood one principle. Every dollar must produce something greater than itself. A poor man cannot afford lazy money. That is the brutal reality. If you are financially weak, every dollar you waste delays your freedom. Every unnecessary purchase steals time from your future. Every impulsive decision strengthens the chains around your life. And this is difficult for people to hear because modern culture worships comfort. People spend money to feel emotionally alive for a few moments. But temporary pleasure often creates permanent weakness. You must begin asking yourself a different question whenever money enters your hands. Not, what can this buy me today? But how can this multiply itself tomorrow? That single shift changes everything. Because wealth is not built through one dramatic event. It is built through thousands of calculated decisions, repeated consistently over time. The poor often underestimate the power of small money because society trains them to think only big amounts matter. They believe saving a little is meaningless. Investing a little is meaningless. Learning slowly is meaningless. But power compounds quietly. A single skill learned today can create opportunities years later. A single investment repeated consistently can eventually become independence. A single disciplined habit can separate your future from everyone around you. But most people never experience this because they constantly interrupt compounding with emotional spending. Think about how dangerous this mentality becomes over years. A person receives money and immediately spends it on appearances, expensive clothes, new phones, luxuries designed to impress strangers. They trade long-term leverage for short-term validation. And the cruel irony is that the people they are trying to impress are often financially trapped themselves. Weak people spend money to display importance. Powerful people use money to create importance. That is why wealthy individuals often look ordinary, while secretly owning assets, businesses, investments, and influence. They understand that visible status can wait, real power cannot. And perhaps this is where true discipline begins. Can you live below your means without feeling ashamed? Can you resist the pressure to prove yourself through consumption? Can you remain patient while others around you chase lifestyles they secretly cannot afford? Because when you are building wealth on a low income, patience becomes a form of warfare. You must train yourself to think like a ruler, managing scarce resources during dangerous times. Nothing wasted. Nothing careless. Everything directed strategically. This does not mean you never enjoy life. It means you stop allowing pleasure to control your future. And here is something even more important. Money should buy skills before it buys comfort. Most people do the opposite. They use money to escape reality temporarily, instead of increasing their value permanently. But a strategic person understands that skills create leverage. The more valuable your abilities become, the less fragile your financial life becomes. A new skill can raise your income for decades. One useful connection can change your opportunities forever. One disciplined investment into yourself can produce returns no job alone can guarantee. This is why self-education becomes revolutionary for low-income people. You may not control the economy. You may not control inflation. You may not control opportunity at first. But you can control whether you become more valuable every year or remain stagnant while the world moves forward without you. And understand this clearly. The world pays people according to the problems they can solve. If you only know how to survive, you remain replaceable. If you learn rare and useful skills, your value increases. That is why every extra dollar should be sent into battle strategically. Some dollars should acquire knowledge. Some should build savings. Some should create small investments. Some should help you escape dependence on unstable systems. But none should be wasted carelessly if your goal is freedom, because freedom itself is expensive, not luxury. Freedom, the freedom to refuse humiliation, the freedom to leave toxic environments, the freedom to survive emergencies without panic, the freedom to think clearly, because desperation no longer controls every decision you make. And desperation is exactly what keeps many people trapped. When someone lives paycheck to paycheck forever, fear dominates their life. Fear of losing a job, fear of illness, fear of unexpected expenses. Fear makes people obedient. Fear forces people to tolerate disrespect, exploitation, and misery, because they have no financial defense against uncertainty. This is why building even small financial reserves changes your psychology. You begin to think differently. Once survival pressure weakens, your decisions become calmer. Your confidence grows. You stop accepting every insult life throws at you because you finally possess some degree of control. But this transformation requires sacrifice. There will be moments when you feel isolated, moments when others seem to enjoy life more than you, moments where discipline feels unfair. But understand what is truly happening. While others consume their future, you are constructing yours. Most people plant nothing and then complain about having no harvest. Strategic people understand delayed rewards. And perhaps the most brutal truth of all is this: money reveals character. Give money to a foolish person, and they create larger problems. Give money to a disciplined person, and they create opportunities. This is why wealth begins long before riches arrive. The habits you build while poor determine what happens if success ever reaches your hands. If you cannot manage little money wisely, large money will only magnify your chaos. So treat every dollar like a soldier under your command. Do not send it into meaningless battles. Do not sacrifice it for applause. Do not waste it trying to imitate people drowning in invisible debt. Because when your money begins working harder than you do, when every small resource becomes part of a larger strategy, when your discipline becomes stronger than your impulses. You slowly transform from someone surviving the system into someone learning how to control pieces of it. There is a painful truth about success that most people discover too late. Transformation requires separation. Every powerful figure in history, whether king, philosopher, conqueror, or strategist, passed through a period of isolation before gaining influence. The world celebrates their victories later, but it rarely speaks about the lonely years where they disappeared from comfort, pleasure, and distraction in order to build strength. And if you are trying to build wealth on a low income, you must understand this immediately. Sacrifice is not punishment. Sacrifice is investment. The problem is that modern society fears isolation more than failure itself. People would rather remain financially trapped with a crowd than become successful alone. Look around carefully. Most individuals spend their entire lives trying to fit into groups that secretly keep them weak. Friends pressure them to spend money they do not have. Social circles normalize debt, laziness, and distraction. Families sometimes ridicule ambition because ambition exposes their own surrender. And slowly, year after year, people abandon their future to protect temporary acceptance. This is how mediocrity spreads, not through force, through social comfort. Human beings naturally imitate their environment. If everyone around you wastes money, avoids discipline, and fears long-term thinking, eventually, those habits begin to feel normal. You stop questioning destructive behavior because it surrounds you daily. And this is why many poor people stay poor even when opportunities appear in front of them. Their environment punishes growth. The moment you begin changing your habits, people become uncomfortable. When you stop wasting money, they call you cheap. When you avoid distractions, they call you boring. When you become focused, they accuse you of changing. But what they truly fear is not your transformation. They fear what your transformation says about their own excuses. Machiavelli understood something brutal about human nature. People often prefer familiar suffering over unfamiliar improvement. A man trapped in weakness feels threatened by anyone escaping it, because your discipline forces him to confront his own lack of control. So there comes a point where building wealth requires emotional detachment from people who drain your future. And this is difficult because humans crave approval. We want acceptance. We want to belong. But power often demands temporary loneliness. A person building financial strength cannot live exactly like everyone else. You may need to spend nights studying while others are partying. You may need to reject expensive lifestyles while others chase appearances. You may need to endure silence while everyone else seeks constant entertainment. And perhaps the hardest part is that during the early stages, nobody applauds sacrifice. People celebrate visible success, not invisible discipline. Nobody sees the nights you refused temptation. Nobody sees the hours you spent improving your skills after exhausting workdays. Nobody sees the loneliness of choosing long-term freedom over short-term pleasure. But this hidden phase is where financial power is truly born. Because isolation sharpens awareness. When you disconnect from endless noise, you begin seeing life differently. You notice how society manipulates desire constantly. You realize how many people spend money emotionally just to avoid confronting themselves. You see how distractions consume entire lives. Endless scrolling, endless gossip, endless entertainment, endless comparison, all designed to keep the mind occupied but never empowered. And the truth is terrifying. Many people are not poor because they lack opportunity. They are poor because their attention is permanently captured. Attention is modern currency. Whatever controls your attention controls your future. If your mind is consumed by trends, drama, and instant gratification, your financial growth weakens automatically. But when you isolate strategically, your thoughts become clearer. Your goals become sharper. Your decisions become more deliberate. This is why powerful people protect their focus aggressively. A distracted man cannot build wealth. He reacts instead of plans, consumes instead of creates, escapes instead of conquers. And understand this carefully. Sacrifice is not only about money. It is about identity. To build a stronger future, you must often kill parts of your old self. The version of you addicted to comfort must disappear. The version of you seeking validation must disappear. The version of you afraid of discipline must disappear, because financial growth demands psychological evolution. Think about what happens to most low-income individuals after receiving extra money. They immediately upgrade their lifestyle. Better clothes, better phone, better entertainment. Temporary pleasure replaces long-term strategy. Why? Because emotionally, they still think like poor people. They seek emotional relief instead of strategic advancement. But the disciplined person delays lifestyle upgrades intentionally. This is where sacrifice becomes power. While others display success publicly, the strategic individual builds strength privately. He understands that appearances can destroy momentum. The moment income increases, society pressures you to spend more. But true financial intelligence means resisting this trap. A man who earns more but spends even more remains a servant. A man who earns modestly but controls his desires becomes dangerous. And perhaps the greatest sacrifice of all is patience. Modern culture worships speed. Everyone wants immediate results, immediate success, immediate wealth, immediate recognition. But real financial power often grows invisibly for years before anyone notices it. This is why most people quit too early. They cannot tolerate the silence between effort and reward. They plant seeds and demand fruit immediately. But nature itself teaches patience. Trees grow slowly before becoming unshakable. Empires rise gradually before dominating nations. Strength compounds quietly before becoming obvious. Your financial life follows the same law. The sacrifices you make today may feel invisible. But invisibility does not mean uselessness. Every disciplined action compounds internally before it appears externally. Every distraction you resist strengthens self-control. Every unnecessary expense you avoid increases future freedom. Every lonely night spent improving yourself separates you from the crowd. And eventually, something extraordinary begins happening. The same people who mocked your discipline start asking for advice. The same people who laughed at your sacrifices begin wondering how your life changed. Because while they were consuming their future for temporary pleasure, you were constructing invisible leverage brick by brick. And leverage changes everything. Once you gain financial breathing room, your mind transforms. Fear weakens. Confidence grows. Choices expand. You stop behaving like someone desperate for survival. You begin behaving like someone preparing for power. But none of this happens without sacrifice. That is the price nobody can escape. The world gives extraordinary freedom only to those willing to endure extraordinary discipline. And most people will never accept this because sacrifice feels painful in the present, while rewards remain distant. Human beings naturally chase comfort, which is why comfort becomes the prison of the average man. But the person who learns to weaponize isolation, who embraces temporary loneliness for permanent growth, who sacrifices pleasure strategically instead of emotionally, who understands that every distraction avoided is another step toward independence, eventually develops something far more valuable than money alone.